Peace and blessings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the magic that is you. So tonight we are going to jump into it because we've got a lot to talk about. First, let's just take a minute before we dive into the truth that you cannot change what you are not willing to tell the truth about. Let's take a minute to just plant our feet and fully arrive here in our bodies. Deep breath in through your belly and out through your mouth. Let's take one more deep breath in. Just let go of the day that you've had prior to this moment and just be here with me now. So, Magic Mondays. This is about remembering the magic within us, the power that we have to create our lives, regardless of what's happening in the world. It's about knowing that we're here for a purpose, that each of us has gifts and a reason for being that no one else on the planet has, because there's only one you ever in the history of the world and ever in the future. And there's only one of you here now, and you are standing at the front of the line of your ancestors. And so, in this moment, we want to bring forth our highest selves. We want to call forth all that is great in us and be living it. And in the moments that we feel like we're not enough, we need tools. We need awareness. We need a deeper knowing, something to lean into, something to recall us back to the truth of who we are. And in our lives, there will always be things that happen. There will always be circumstances. There will always be situations that will test our resilience, our resolution, and our patience, and our values. And so, really taking the time and the energy that it takes to know yourself, to care for yourself, and to trust yourself in a way that is not usually recognized or acknowledged or even seen in the world is what is possible for us to be doing as an example, as a witness, to be witnessed, so that we can even just see ourselves differently, rather than through the lens of the pain of our past or the pain or of our perceived failures, which are really just the experiences that we've had that taught us the lessons that made us who we are. Rather than through that lens, we can look at ourselves through all possibility, the promise of joy, the promise of this life to us is this creative power, the ability to bring thought to form, a unique gift that we've been given as human beings. So I could go on about that, but let's stay on task tonight because I want to be in and out in 30. But just know that is what's beneath it all, right? That's why I'm here, and I hope that you'll join me on this journey. And so the truth being that we can't change anything that we aren't willing to tell the truth about really has us looking at what we tell ourselves, what we believe about ourselves, because most people don't have an issue that's strategy based. They really just aren't seeing what's already there to see and interacting with it in a way that's honest and true so that they can actually move in a way that is aligned. Because if you are not acting from correct information, then it's very challenging to create a course to the destination. If the destination is either skewed or the path is muddied, then we make it much more challenging for ourselves to get where we want to go and to live the way we want to live. And that might be in the realm of relationship or career or even just a relationship with ourselves, wanting to feel good on a daily basis, wanting to feel like ourselves, not like we're putting on a show or like we don't fit in or that we have to be perfect or prove something. And so we're going to get into this now. So let's just talk a minute about awareness. Awareness is actually the A in magic. And yes, there's always an acronym. If you're working with me, you know there's always a framework and there's always an acronym. I love meaning because words are so important because they carry energy, and the meaning we associate and attach to them become what we live. And whether we're speaking them to someone or over ourselves, they're really important because that is what we begin to believe is true. And our beliefs are what determine how we move in the world, right? It's our lens. And so awareness can sound really simple, but it's what most people struggle with because they're not honest with themselves. And so, you know, being honest can be uncomfortable, especially if you don't feel like it's something that is valued by all that you're engaged with. But it has to become a practice that we use to engage with ourselves. And that's really the most important one. And so whether, you know, we're dealing with something like a relationship that we know is no longer aligned. Maybe we're staying longer than we know we should. Maybe we're trying really hard to form an alliance with an entity, a business, a company, or a person that really isn't a good fit for us. Maybe there's something in your body that doesn't feel good that you've been avoiding, right? So awareness versus avoidance is something that a lot of people struggle with. If I don't look at it, somehow it doesn't exist, but it's not true. What happens is it festers and then it goes from, you know, a match lit to a forest fire. And then we have a bigger situation to deal with if we avoid or ignore. How many have the tendency to avoid things? And maybe you could see it as a pattern, like maybe you avoid opening your mail because you don't want to see bills, or maybe you avoid hard conversations, or maybe you've been avoiding going to the gym. Whatever it is that you've been avoiding, it doesn't get solved if there's something underneath there that needs to be looked at. It doesn't just go away. It usually just compounds over time. Maybe it's that you know you have a pattern of saying yes when you really mean no, and you know it's something that has been happening for a long time, and it's leading you to outcomes that are not desired, situations that you don't want to be in, energy that's being expended that you didn't want to expend, or saying no to things that you want to say yes to that is having you missing opportunities. And believe me, you know, you're not alone. Like, this is something that we've all dealt with. I've certainly had, you know, my share of things that in my past that I've said yes to that I didn't want to do. And it wasn't until I really formed an alliance with myself and became my own best friend, started to treat myself, right, the way that I want to be treated in a relationship, that things started to change for me, right? That my boundaries became very clear and easy to convey and relay and to stick by. Because it's also one thing to set a boundary and it's another to hold it, especially when there is judgment or perceived loss that could be happening on the other side, or some consequence that you're afraid of. But your values and, you know, self-care has to become a core value. And for that to be that barrier and that wall of boundary, that line in the sand, to become something that's firm rather than something that can just keep getting moved with every different circumstance or interaction. Another one that I see a lot is people are exhausted and they're still pushing because they haven't yet learned how to allow versus to keep trying. And that's really usually something that I see when people lack trust. If you aren't able to trust or surrender to a moment and trust that you'll show up in that moment the way you need to in order to for the moment to be what it's meant to be, or you don't trust the people you're working with to get the thing done, or whatever, there's always a trust component when you are still trying to force a peg into a hole that wasn't designed to fit into, and you're butting up against resistance when allowing a different path to open up, shifting perspective, releasing the pressure. Because when you're pushing, there's always something pushing against you. So there's wherever there is effort being pushed, there is a force resisting it. And so when you let go, step aside perhaps, and allow that energy to be released, and then you see ahead of you many other options of possibility. And so that's what allowing creates. And that's what trust creates. Creates a broader perspective and a pathway to be seen or form that wasn't there previously in your purview. So what do we do instead when we feel like when we're in a place of avoidance versus a place of alignment? We might distract ourselves. We might watch TV, like maybe we Netflix, or we binge a show. What else do we do? You put in, if you're watching now live or the replay, just put in chat, like, what do you do to distract yourself when you're in a place of avoidance? Whether it's a big decision, or it's the mail, or it's making the phone call, or it's a conversation or a text message you don't want to respond to. Whatever it is for you that's showing up as I'm talking, let people know that they're not alone. Put it in chat. Put it in the comments. We might scroll social media. We might reach for the phone, or when there's a silence and we don't want to be in that silence, because what happens in silence, what happens in stillness, is that our feelings can be felt. And this is the same kind of concept that is the root of why people use substances, because when you sit with nothing but yourself in stillness and silence, there's nothing there between you and the truth of what's happening within you. And so, it might also be something that is seemingly mundane, or not as critically positioned in our hierarchy of importance in our societal structure, like just feeling the silence, like being able to sit in silence with another human and not feel like you have to say something, could be a way that you're avoiding something actually real from coming to the surface or forming. So these are all things that are probably something that you've either witnessed or experienced yourself. So just as I'm talking, just think about what is coming up from you and letting yourself feel into what's showing up for you. Another thing that sometimes we do when we're in avoidance, we might justify. We tell ourselves it's not that bad, when we know darn well if it were someone else, we would tell, and we were giving advice to them, we would tell them to stop it immediately. Whether it's the relationship, or it's eating the food, or it's breaking the habit, whatever it is, or avoiding the bills, whatever it is. We might even say it's something that it's always been that way, or it's just how it is. If you ever heard anyone say that, or you found yourself saying that, or it's you just put it off. You say, I'll deal with it later. We make it make sense. And part of it is a physiological and biological design, right? Where our ego doesn't want to be wrong. So, of course, if we have a belief, a belief system that we feel like is holding our infrastructure together, and then what we do is we constantly scan the world and scan our situations for the actions and the beliefs and the truths that will align with our belief system. We don't want to be wrong, right? Because especially if we have an attachment to our identity as this being who we are, which can sometimes be the case. Sometimes we have a little bit of confusion around actually who we are versus what we believe and value, because and what's true and what's not true. What is actually a result of our conditioning versus what is the actual truth of our constitution. Something else we might do is we might go into analysis mode where we're trying to figure something out and we give it our attention and focus and we use our brain power to try to figure it out, to get the right answer, to understand it. Maybe it's a conversation you had that you don't actually go to the person you had that conversation with. You actually just try to figure it out on your own without talking to them again, what they really meant by something or what the result of the conversation actually, how it landed the relationship. You don't even know how you left it, right? So, this is where we're in the ether or in this no man's land, this space between trying to figure it out. But we don't actually ever sit with our own feelings about it. We stay in our mind because that is safer. Feeling can be dangerous, or at least we perceive it to be so. And certainly engaging with someone else who also has feelings could be super dangerous. Thinking gives us a distance between the feeling and us so that we can not feel a way that we don't want to feel, a way that's scary. Maybe we have a belief that being angry is sinful or is not allowed for some reason. And we know that if we allow ourselves to actually look at what's going on, we will have an anger that maybe we won't even be able to control. Sometimes losing control could be behind the avoidance. So I'm just giving possibilities here. These are things that I've seen working with clients, things that I've experienced and things that I've witnessed. And I hope that this is helpful for you. Another thing I see a lot with clients is that they stay busy. So often their schedule will be so full and they feel overwhelmed by their schedule. But the thing is, who created your schedule? And then you can start to look at who actually created your schedule. It's you, right? Ultimately, what you said yes or no to, or wrote in your schedule, or typed in your schedule is what gets put into your schedule, and then your schedule becomes your life. So you do have power in that sense, and we need to take that power back so that we can actually affect change where we are feeling malalignment. And the reasons that we will come up with, or the excuses, depending on how you look at it, that we will say, oh, well, it's for my job. I have to. So in your mind, you have to because it's for your job. And I get how real that sounds. I do. And the truth is it though? Is that the absolute truth, that because it's your job, you can't say no? Or are you choosing to not say no? Maybe it's the consequence that you fear of being demoted or losing the job, or the assignment going to someone else and you losing status. Whatever it is, it's still not true that you have to. The truth is you're choosing to. So the awareness of choice can make us feel empowered or disempowered. So you're starting to see how awareness is it's not a fluff concept. It really is a powerful, powerful concept to become more aware of what's true can change everything. Okay, so we know that we've talked about how, getting still can be a strategy, to avoid it. We can create a strategy to avoid being still because you could start to feel something in that silence or in that space. And we talked about, that very moment of silence or stillness, or the feeling that we're afraid of feeling in that moment, is what people are avoiding. And so that can, let's just transition now into what that ends up leaving, how it ends up leaving us feeling. And so usually the word that people describe is feeling stuck. They feel like they feel stuck because they feel like they don't have choice. And that's usually the place, but it can look different for different people. They might not be able to articulate that it's because they don't have choice. It might show up as something completely different. So, they might just say something like, I don't know what to do. So confusion might become the concept or the focus or the adopted way of being that becomes the strategy. Well, confusion is actually a combination of many emotions can be under confusion, but it's really when there's conflict between your head and your heart. And usually when your head is trying to convince your heart of something that it knows is not true, we say we're confused. But really, we're just afraid to take the action that conflicts with our head, because in our head we know the consequences that are going to come from it are ones we're trying to avoid. Do we see that connection? Okay. Do a little time check here. Okay. We might need to do a part 2. So now we're talking about why we feel stuck, the actual reasons that we feel stuck, not the surface ones, the ones that are actually running the show, and how they're created and how we can begin to understand them so we can not feel stuck and also not create the stuckness in the first place. We can release the stuckness and then also not do it in the future. So another thing that it can look like when we feel stuck is frustration. And frustration it's in the same family as confusion. So it's something that we create for ourselves. And I know that can sound harsh, but it's true. We create our own feelings, and it's very much a pattern, a cycle. Thinking, feeling, we take actions, we have a result, and then we have thoughts about that end result that lead to more feelings and more actions that usually reinforce that same result. Self-fulfilling prophecy. And so frustration is the combination of anger and a feeling of helplessness. And so it's usually a feeling we suppress our anger a bit, like we're not fully allowing ourselves to fully express our anger. And also it's mixed with the feeling of, I don't know what to do, or I can't do the thing that I really know in my heart that I should do. And should in this case is being used as the thing that's going to get you the outcome that you ultimately know is the best outcome for you and for everyone involved, likely. So frustration, this feeling of helplessness actually comes from and leads to self-resentment, because we know that there's an action to take, like telling the complete truth, like saying no, like actually making a decision that is against the majority of people involved, or having a hard conversation, and maybe it's breaking up with someone, maybe it's that you've been with that you thought maybe was going to be the person, or is heavily invested and they'll be hurt. And maybe you're someone who doesn't like to deal with conflict. So I'm just throwing out hypotheticals because these are things that I've seen. And frustration, like most fear-based and fear-driven emotions, can be solved with aligned action. So here we're dealing with the question, do I not know what to do, or am I unwilling to do the thing that will actually bring true resolution here? And when I say resolution, I mean it's in alignment with the ultimate and highest intention, right? Not the thing that's going to leave people liking us or leave people feeling good about us or even just good about themselves. It's about being radically honest in a way, and it's not about, diminishing anyone. This is just truth and truth doesn't need to be delivered harshly. I've seen people that whole deliver the facts and nothing but the facts and the truth, and the truth can also be covered in love. And it can be spoken as your truth can be spoken with a sense of certainty that is soft enough to land and not feel like you're attacking, and also hard enough to feel like it's final. And it just takes practice and clarity on your part. Okay, so I know I don't want to be on forever. I want to just honor the time frame I set here. There's a lot more to discuss here, but I think that you kind of understand what I'm saying, and we've made tell me the value you've gotten so far, and anything you want to expound on or that really hit for you. I'd love to hear it. And I think this last piece, I'll just spend a few minutes on it because I think it really is so important, and it will make a lot of things make sense. A lot of what I'm talking about and have referenced many times is about what's happening beneath the surface. The current that runs underneath is our subconscious patterns. And these are things that we've learned through our environment, through our authority figures in our youth. There are things that actually we continue to learn based on the outcomes of those results I talked about, the thinking, emotions, and the actions and the results that reinforce our current belief system, right? So they don't necessarily feel like beliefs because they feel like facts, they feel true. And this is often why, we need people to help us see our blind spots. We need conversations that bring up things that help us have ahas and see things a little differently, so that we can actually begin to uncover these layers and make truer choices and more aligned decisions. And how these could show up, similar to what I said earlier about, excuse me, about having to. Have tos and our feeling of obligation is something we create. Excuse me. Ooh. And often comes from this very place, this subconscious place of beliefs that run underneath the current of everything that we're doing and saying. So it might come out of a place of I can't trust people, or I have to hold it all together. And you become the person who actually is always organizing everything, is always the friend that makes contact first, right? It's that person who holds it all together. The one who always comes through no matter what else is happening in your life. And this is how it doesn't feel like a belief, it just feels like who you are. Except it is a belief. Because a belief is something that can change when new information is introduced. And so the more we learn about ourselves, about the more we learn tools, the more we learn strategies that actually align us with our truth and our purpose and the outcomes that we truly desire, the more we feel like we're aligning with the truth of ourselves and thus our wholeness. We have more peace. We feel more palpable love for ourselves. We trust ourselves more. And we have a sense of purpose because that sense of empowerment to actually make decisions and being able to trust them, that empowerment to actually be able to have a full expression of our emotions and then come back to center, to be able to, have conflict and not make it personal. We can disagree about things that are on the table, and it doesn't have to make you the devil or someone who's wrong or the enemy. And it doesn't mean necessarily that I'm right or higher or on some hierarchy. It's simply a conflict, a disagreement, and we figure out how either to be maybe compromise a little on things that are flexible, and that means you need to know your non-negotiables. So there are many things involved, but on the table doesn't have to make it, you don't have to make it personal, which is the point for tonight. Right? Tonight, you don't have to make it personal. And that means you don't need to take things personally. And that's a whole nother conversation. So these patterns that we talked about, they might show up, as you not letting people see you when you're struggling. You might be, this strong one that I talked about. It might be feeling like you don't, you have to do it by yourself in order for it to ever get done because you can't trust other people to do it. But you might not think that I have a trust problem and that trust problem is actually about trusting myself. You might take on more than you actually have the capacity for, right? So things like that. And we can dive a bit deeper in this at another time, but I think that's plenty deep for tonight. I think we kind of understand, hopefully, this was helpful to you and maybe brought up some things that got you thinking a bit and brought about some awareness, right? Even some insight. So what I would like to leave you with is something to do that can actually move the needle. So the truth of the matter is that everything that matters actually begins in the body. The truth begins here, can always be felt, asked, and answered here, often before the mind is even aware of it. The body knows. You might feel tightness, you might feel maybe even pulsing or heat. You might feel sensations in your body that are telling you something that you just aren't yet able to read and understand the language that is communicating with you in. And so just even beginning to slow down and connect into yourself and with yourself will allow you to then also be, and we do that through alignment and connection to the body, which is not you, but it is yours. And it is the vehicle and the vessel through which you are expressing you. Okay, so here we go. Let's just take a moment, and this is something that you will be able to do anytime. And it's often, I find, beneficial to do it before bed or first thing in the morning, when you're fresh and haven't yet had experiences in the day, and perhaps even have some downloads from the evening, from the sleep, or before you go to bed, which actually asking yourself questions and writing down how you think and how you feel and what you think will allow you to be more empty before you go to bed, and more fully expressed, getting it out of you and becomes something that can actually be worked with versus something that just repeats inside your internal landscape. So just take a moment and I invite you to close your eyes if it feels good for you to do, or bring them to a gentle gaze. And just take a couple of deep breaths in through your nose without forcing, nice and easy. Allow your body to expand and allow it to contract. Just notice your own rhythm as you're breathing. Just notice your own rhythm. And often, to ask the heart a question, you can place your hand there and just notice. What's there to notice? And tonight's question, where in my life am I already aware that I'm avoiding something? And what's the truth? If you like different words, where in my life am I avoiding something I already know is true? I already know is true. Or where am I making something true that is keeping me from my next level? Next level relationship, next level peace, next level career, whatever it is. And just sit with it and notice what comes up. Try not to think your answer, just feel into it. Notice what's there. You might get an image, you might get part of your body responding with some actual movement. Your heart rate might go up. You might just know. You might just know the answer. Take a deep breath in and exhale fully. And when you're ready, come back. Clarity doesn't come to us by thinking more. It comes from us really seeing what's already there that we weren't seeing before. There's nothing being hidden from you or avoiding you. What you want wants you. Answers are always available. They just need your honesty, your presence, the truth of you to be seen. Awesome. So that is how I'm going to leave this Magic Monday. It's been so wonderful to be here with you today. Thank you for joining me or watching the replay. I appreciate you, and let me know. Let me know what came up for you. If you'd like to drop what came up for you, what you've been avoiding, into the Facebook group, the Rise in Freedom Facebook group. I'll post a link in the comments. And let's make one commitment. Once you realize, have the awareness, the next step, as I said, anytime you have something that's fear-based, like avoidance, you want to take an action, because that is how you meet fear. And you allow fear to exist, but not drive and make decisions for you. So decide one action. The thing that is the most obvious is usually the thing that is meant to, is the thing, right? It's usually the thing. The thing that's most obvious is usually the answer. So do the thing and tell us what the thing was. Put this either in the comments here in the feed, or you can put it in the Rise and Freedom group And the replay will be there after the 30 days that Facebook Lives are kept on my feed by Facebook. The replays will actually, I'm going to download this video and put it in the Rise and Freedom group, so you can have it as long as you need it. So that's the place to be if you want the replays. I'm also happy to have you here on my timeline and continue to show up here as well. However you get the info is great. And however you meet me here and we share this time together, I'm grateful. If no one's told you today, I love you. And just remember that you are more powerful than you know. You are loved. And peace is your innate state of being.